I don't see any questions on Jaina Ramayanas. So let us now move on to the next speaker, Vaijayanthi Chakravarthi ji, who is going to talk about Tamil Ramayanas, mini Ramayanas, a study of mini Ramayana in Perumal, Tirumoli and Ramanataka Kirtanaigal. Perumal Tirumoli is a text in which mini Ramayana is a part, and Ramanataka Kirtanaigal seems to be a Ramayana text. Vaijayanthi Chakravarthi ji is a freelance writer. She has a background in English literature, and she has been associated with Indic Academy from a very, very long time, almost from its beginnings. And she has been contributing to in many of the Indic Academy events in many ways. Thank you very much, Vaijayanthi ji. Over to you.
Thank you, Nagaraj Garu. I have only a small presentation since I couldn't add a lot of verses and audio that I wanted to do. Yet I will share that. See that now? Okay, I'll start. நாடிய பொருள் கைகூடும் ஞானமும் புகழும் உண்டாம் வீடியல் வழியதாக்கும் வேரியம் கமலை நோக்கும் நீடிய அரக்கர் சேனை நீருபட்டழியவாகை சூடிய சிலை ராமன் தோள்வழி கூறுவார்க்கே நன்மையும் செல்வமும் நாளும் நல்குமே திண்மையும் பாவமும் சிதைந்து தேயுமே ஜென்மமும் மரணமும் இன்றி தீருமே இம்மயராம என்று இரண்டெழுத்தினால். Srirangam Jayam. Namaskaram and thanks to Indica, Nagaraj Garu, and for the continued support I've had to make presentations and also to write on the Indica platform, though it's been infrequent. It's great pleasure to talk about Ramayana, but the context that I'm bringing it today is not so very pleasant. But somebody has to do it, so I thought, let me do it. When Nagaraj Garu brought the question of what is, whether Perumal, the Kulasekhara's Ramayana is a version of Ramayana, and also if Ramanataka Kirtanegal is a version of Ramayana, that is when I got thinking about like, what is this version? About the telling, retelling, and all the issues connected with it. In Tamil, we've had a literary tradition. Kamba Ramayana is very popular, very well known, commented upon, written about widely, translated, and all that. I Kamban apart, but Kamban forms very much part of the tradition. But I am looking at two authors, one pre-Kamban and one post-Kamban, to look at this continuity of the tradition and as to how they approach Ramayana and what is the Rama, who's the Rama they talk about and how they approach the whole text. A brief intro to who's Kulasekhara and who's Sirgadi Arunachala Kavi. Kulasekhara Alvar is one of the 12 Alvars from the Sri Vaishnava pantheon. He is credited with 2 works if we take his Mukunda Mala into account. And of course, the Perumal Tirumoli, which forms part of the Nalayira Divya Prabandham, the compendium of all the Alvar verses. We do not know if Kulasekhara wrote this Ramayana as a separate work or not, but we have these 105 verses that is available from Kulasekhara as Perumal Tirumoli, of which the 11th verses is a mini Ramayana. And of course, there are verses which he precedes before, which is available before this mini Ramayana in the 9th and the 8th decades of the Perumal Tirumoli, which also deal with the Ramayana subject. Kulasekhara, from traditional account, we know to have been a Chera king from Tiruvanjikalam, which is close to present-day Kochi, a devotee who wanted nothing but Perumal's darshan at Srirangam and to live among the Bhagavatas there. His period is generally accepted to be around 8th century CE. Perumal Tirumozhi, as I said, is part of the Alvar verses, and we are going to see that part of Ramayana that comes in this Perumal Tirumozhi, and it is not a separate work, as I said. And we go much later in time and look at Sirgari Arunachala Kavirayar, who comes in the 18th century. He was born at a place called Tillayadi, and he studied under the Tamil Saiva Mata Dharmapura Adinam. And he was asked to become at one stage the Matathipati, which he declined because he said he's following Ramayana and he also follows Tirukural and he wanted to follow Grihastha Ashrama. So he continued to be a Grihastha, though he married very late at 30 in those days, must have been very late. But after that, he gets patronized by the Dharmapura Adinam and he settles down at Sirgadi, after which he writes most of his literary works, of which we can say the magnum opus is the Ramanataka Kirtanegal. Ramanataka Kirtanegal is in the Geya Nataka, opera form. It is actually first of its kind in Tamil literature that we have today. And Kulasekhara is also first in the sense it is the first complete Ramayana telling, the narration of complete Ramayana that we have available in Tamil literature. So both Kulasekhara and Arunachala Kavi that way are like pioneers in their own sense, but they form part of this literary tradition, which takes Ramayana over centuries in a similar Bhakti tradition, not deviating from the core Dharma, if we can use the word, or the core principles of Ramayana, and as to who Rama was, the avatara, the deity, and all that. The Ramanataka Kirtanegal, apart from that, Arunachala Kavi is credited to have written many other works, of which Sirgadi's Talapuranam is mentioned prominently, and a work which apparently we do not have with us, which is a Hanuman Pillai Tamil. He was also a devotee of Hanuman. So he wrote a Pillai Tamil. Pillai Tamil is a genre where you take the deity and look at him as a baby growing up, and the growing up stages of the baby or Sangapur. So that is the work which he had done. And the background to discussing these works is, if I can say, in the style of what we call an Aryan problem, the problem of many Ramayanas. Paturiji spoke about it in his introduction, and also later Aryambaji is going to talk about the same work, a part of which I have picked up as a background for my paper. One is A.K. Ramanujan's famous 300 Ramayanas, which was published in 1987. And after that comes the publication edited by Paula Richman, Many Ramayanas, The Diversity of a Narrative Tradition in South Asia, in 1991. Written and published in American universities for long, they remained part of the academic circles. The controversy over 300 Ramayanas perhaps has been a reason why both these works have become widely read and discussed. I'll put before you a few statements or sentences from Richmond's essay in her collection on E.V. Ramaswamy's reading of the Ramayana. As you all would know, E.V. Ramaswamy is E.V. Ramaswamy Nayakar, who is also known as Periyar, who led the Dravidian movement in Tamil Nadu. He started as a congressman, later moved to Justice Party, the self-respect movement, and started his own Dravida Kazhagam. Dravida Kazhagam had offshoot political parties, first DMK, which is ruling Tamil Nadu now, and the AADMK. So that is the background to E.V. Ramaswamy Nayakar. I will refer to him as EVR in the talk. For years, I heard, I'm quoting Richmond. For years, I had heard people refer to E.V. Ramaswamy's interpretation of the Ramayana in a mocking and dismissive way. When I actually analyzed his reading of the story of Rama, however, I found much of it strikingly compelling and coherent if viewed in the light of his anti-North Indian ideology. I would like to take note of this expression, anti-North Indian ideology, which is what is important to the discussion. And next is, despite the widespread belief that Rama acts as an embodiment of writer's action, certain deeds that he performs have troubled various authors of Ramayana texts over centuries. because the textual treatment of these morally ambiguous deeds often involves dealing with them in creative ways. The study of such incidents can reveal some of the sources of diversity within the Ramayana tradition. Uh, Actually, this is again a question that we need to ask whether when we appreciate the diversity of Ramayana, fabulous. Today we heard so many versions, the Malaya Ramayana, the Jaina Ramayana, and all of it. But the the way these texts are presented, I think that we need to look at, and the labeling, which I am going to deal with in a different context also later in terms of the versions issue. And she takes up the sources EVR quotes. She says the whole statement is coherent because he quotes sources. The sources he quotes are P. Sundaram Pillai, a Tamil Vellala, which is basically a Aryan-Dravidian point of view that Pillai brought about. Ponnambilam Pillai, she quotes about the articles in Malabar Review, which summarized Sundaram Pillai's view. And these are as the credible sources which EVR followed to present his theory of how we looked at Ramayana as an Aryan invasion of Dravidian values and Dravidian land and everything. Richman titles her essay as Tellings as Commentary and Programs for Action, clearly laying before us the use of Ramayana by E.V. Ramasamy Nayakar for his political and divisive agenda of Aryan-Dravidian North-South. It is unambiguous. What is unsettling is the fact that the atheistic political pamphlet of Periyar is dealt with as a Ramayana, followed by a Tengalai Sri Vaishnava approach to the Ramayana. So both become versions of Ramayana here, which is an irony, but they all become part of the Ramayana versions. He is this makes it difficult for readers, followers of Ramayana, actually, as to whether one is reading about a retelling, a telling based on either the plot or the characters that were originally in Ramayana, literary criticism, or they are reading a political essay or a socio-religious exploration. The genres and divides and labeling, everything gets blurred when you bunch these kind of very diverse and ideologically motivated and various kinds of works together to present it as like each one is a Ramayana. And she goes on further also to talk about how Ramasamy Nayakar didn't stop, EVR didn't stop with just writing his pamphlet Ramayana. His followers and the Dravida Kadagam actually used to enact this Ramayana under the title. The drama used to be titled Kimayana. She herself says Kima is a nonsense sound. Okay, the Kimayana doesn't mean anything. He just wanted to say Ramayana, Kimayana, something is rhyming. So he just named it because that is how he treated the text, which we know from his discourse because it has been part of the Tamil political discourse for decades now. The play's portrayal of Rama as a drunkard and Sita as a wanton woman earned it the comment, which was a review in those days in newspapers. Hoodlum stage filled in Trichy. That was one review which she quotes. The high, or in bracket she writes, or low, depending on viewer's perspective, point in the performance occurred when participants beat images of Rama with their polluting leather sandals. This is a recorded political incident from Tamil Nadu, which has been talked about in recent time quite often, but which was not known to the larger world before that. Similarly, EVR's scheduled burning of images of Rama in 1957 and 1956 testifies to his desire to dramatize his exegetical attack. By reversing the North Indian ritual of Ravana burning, he not only enacts his verbal attack on Rama, but reminds Tamilians of the urgent need for them to embrace his political interpretation of the Ramayana. He thought much of Tamilian tradition, or what Tamils thought as idiotic, and he said like you shouldn't be believing in all that. So his Ramayana narrative is part of his belief in that. Then she again supports Periyar's work, saying that he not only quoted the Vellala sources, he also quoted Brahmin sources like Krishnaswamy Iyengar and Nilakanta Shastri and all of them. And she says it is heard that he read Ramayana with commentaries, but doesn't quote any specific verses. That he quotes many authors in his pamphlet, including Brahmins, sort of becomes a justification. See this partial table reproduced from the essay to understand what EVR's reading of Ramayana has been and of which Ramayana and which of the Ramayana was or could have been his source. I'm not going to read out what all he says, the slander which he uses against Sita and Lakshmana and all of it. Suffice to say that he wanted to show them in poor light as people of poor character. Rama, Sita, Lakshmana, all of them are having poor character. So that is what his this thing was. You can see very well what his sources could have been going by, what he says, what you can see in the slide, if you can read it, what he says about Dasratha, Sita, Bharata, Lakshmana, partial table that I have reproduced here. Now let us look at some of the sources that supported EVR's Aryan-Dravidian theory and how he thought the book was an allegory of North attacking, capturing and subduing South, though he didn't believe in Ramayana. Quoting here some passages from Tamilian Antiquary edited by Pandit Savari Rayan, which was first published in 1910. The essay by T. Ponnambalam Pillai, The Morality of Ramayana. He says he posted this article or the essay post the death of Professor Sundaram Pillai. Sundaram Pillai didn't publish this in his lifetime, but Ponnambalam Pillai thought that he should publish them post the death of him because it needed to be known to the larger world or whatever the justification is. Okay. You can see what the opinion of Sundaram Pillai, as stated by Ponnambalam Pillai, is here. He was of the opinion that it was meant to proclaim prowess of the Aryans and represent their rivals and enemies, the Dravidians, who had attained a high degree of civilization at that period in the worst possible color. It's like Ramayana was against Dravidian, so he had to state that, and which is what Periyar or EVR wanted to correct when he wrote the pamphlet Ramayana. He offers this criticism taking for granted that the story is founded on facts. Okay, one more quote. Ravana, one of the important characters in the Ramayana, was versed in the Vedas and was a staunch believer in Shiva. The austere penance performed by him was such as to shake even the very foundations of Mount Kailasha. His proficiency in music was so great as even to move Shiva. And finally, look at it. He administered his kingdom so well that internal peace was never disturbed. He was a dutiful son, father, husband, and brother. He could always be relied upon, and he maintained the laws of war with honor. He treated enemies with generosity, nay, with magnanimity. Okay. And then one more passage. I don't know. I don't have that here, but I'll quote a few from those. With regard to the molestation of the sages, it has already been stated that they were the Vaidikas, or priestly portion of the Aryan intruders. History has repeated itself over and over again. They were the missionaries that preceded the conquest of Dravida by the Aryans. While performing their religious rites, it is like kind of a recce which these rishis made before Rama could come and conquer their the Dravidian territories, which is what he wants to say. And he dismisses abduction of Sita as nothing unusual, all part of war. In the same volume, a rebuttal to Pillai's essay has been published, and that is what you can see on the screen here, which is by one Sadashiva Iyer. Apparently, he was a Chief Justice of Travancore at that time. He writes with a great agony that as to why this has been published after the death of Sundaram Pillai. We don't know whether he wanted to publish and why have you published, he asks. And then he puts up a few questions. He asks, you say these are all from Valmiki. So tell us whether Valmiki alone has been relied upon when you said these things. What are those things? That Ravana was a dutiful son, husband, brother. He treated his enemies with generosity. Ravana went with the object of demanding satisfaction, but in the absence of brothers, he had a fierce fight with one of their uncles and his hordes, as if Jatayu fought assisted by a horde, and after vanquishing them, carried away Sita. Tataka was the grandmother of Ravana. Sugriva was ambitious of becoming the king himself and proved refractory by refusing to hand over the reins of government, and Vali had to fight for regaining his kingdom. Vibhishana was a great coward in as much as he never took part in any of the battles that were fought between his brother's forces and those of Rama. The country that lies between the Vindhya mountain and the northern limits of His Highness of Nizam's dominions, this was published in 1910, so you can understand the geography here, was subject to the rule of Ravana. It says like the southern territory was anyway the territory of Ravana. Iyer's rebuttal once again gets a very long reply from Pillai. I'm not going into it, and but he wants to say that for in my article I pointed out that it was a partisan account, and the object of the thesis was to enhance the reputation of his compeers at the expense of their adversaries. A criticism of Ramayana he puts forth. Actually, it is not just these sources which EVR relied upon. I also want to talk about what R.C. Majumdar has written in his book, Ancient India, about this North-South Aryan-Dravidian. I found it surprising when I read it. I don't know what else he had written on the subject in his later works, but this was a prescribed text for us when we were doing our Ancient Indian Culture course. That is how I happened to read this, and he says, which I quoted on the right here, in its historical setting, the Ramayana represents the most notable fact during the period under review, that is the expansion of Aryan culture over Deccan and South India. It plainly hints at the methods employed by the conquerors. The missionary, see the use of the word missionary, the missionary enterprises backed by military power and the setting up of one non-Aryan tribe against the other. It also pays an indirect tribute to the high state of material and moral culture of the non-Aryans. The unfair means by which Vali was killed by Rama and Indrajit by his brother Lakshmana only prove once more that a conquering race cannot always be scrupulous in its methods of warfare. So the Pillai's accounts, R.C. Majumdar's account, present what perhaps was current theory in those days in terms of the Aryan invasion of India, or Aryan invasion of the Dravida land, whichever we want to take about. In the last several decades, of course, we have come down from Aryan invasion theory to Aryan migration to Aryan problem, and not sure how long before it is abandoned. But these have formed part of the Ramayana narrative in the Dravidian South. Till then, we have this theory. We'll have EVR and his followers use the texts that were available to them and texts which are available today, written by EVR and his followers. In fact, in Tamil literature, we have a work called Ravana Kaviyam, which is Ravana is the hero there and Rama is the villain there. And it is part of the curriculum. When we were in BA course, it was portion of it was a text in our Tamil book. And MA students of Tamil literature studied it as part of the contemporary literature. So Pulavar Kuzhandhai's Kaviyam was mainstream, whereas EVR's Ramayana remained as a pamphlet and the drama enacted by his supporters. The issue is actually not about EVR writing it, as to how EVR's Ramayana is used. Whereas Richmond has used it as part of many Ramayanas to make it into Ramayana tradition or the Ramayana culture or versions. Actually, the way to look at it is like how he is looked at it from the political commentator's point of view. There is this work called The Politics of Cultural Nationalism in South India by Margaret Ross Bennett. She quotes Periyar's Ramayana too, but in the context of like how Ramayana was used as a political tool. I quote, as early as 1920-22, while he was still a member of Congress, E.V. Ramasamy advocated burning the Manu Dharma Shastras and the Ramayana, while a sadhu, he was like, supposed to have been a wanderer for several years, where he went to North India, also Banaras and other places. So she calls him a sadhu. Before his political activities, he advocated abandoning Hindu mythology because it represented a corrupting influence. It further states how he continued to give the performances of Ramayana even after the split of DMK into a separate political party and all that. For a work that was called Kimayana, which is just a blabber of a word to mock Ramayana, what seriousness does Richmond expect it to be treated with? I do not understand. But for an appreciation of it as a coherent work based on the sources that he had quoted. If there was a recognized genre of fan fiction at that time, perhaps EVRs would fit the bill. Actually, the opposite of what can be the fan fiction, opposite of fan. But to call it a retelling of Ramayana is definitely a travesty. It is in this context and the issue of versions of Ramayana, I take up the two works from the Tamil literary tradition. What would be account as a version? What would account as a version, a derivative, a spoof, a criticism, or anything that becomes part of a tradition? In his 300 Ramayanas, A.K. Ramanujan, he does not approve of the word versions. And he says 300 Ramayanas, he dealt with different tellings. He uses the word tellings. I have come to prefer the word tellings. I'm quoting him. I've come to prefer the word tellings to the usual terms, versions, or variants because the latter terms can and typically do imply that there is an invariant, an original. Because if you say retelling, you go to a source and your source invariably is Valmiki Ramayana. So that is a problem. In fact, now this idea has become so mainstream. There are a lot of people who come and tell you, there is not one Ramayana, there are many Ramayanas. Valmiki was not one person, and various things that this is given rise to. But as we shall see, it is not always Valmiki's narrative that is carried upon from one language to another. That is what he says. So there is this problem. Where do we look for an answer? I take refuge under the Tamil traditions in calling Kulasekhara's Mini Ramayana and Arunachala Kavi's Ramanataka Kirtana as versions. Vaimu Gopala Krishnamacharya, he was a great commentator on Kamba Ramayana. He edited and published it. And in the publication, in the commentary, the introduction to the Kamba Ramayana edition that he published, he asks a question. How can Kamban write a Ramayana based on Valmiki and yet make changes in them, either to suit the times, geography, or culture? Vaimu Gopala Krishnamacharya, he reconciles that by quoting a sutra. He says, Inganam Kuralamo என்று சிலருக்கு ஐயம் தோன்றலாம். இது இவ்வாறு கூறுவது அமைவுறும் என்பதையே முன்னோர் நூலின் முடிவு ஒருங்கு ஒத்து பின்னோன் வேண்டும் விகற்பம் கூறி அழியா மரபினது வழிநூல் ஆகும். This is the sutra from the old grammar text, Nannul, which is like one of the formative grammar texts that we follow, we study. What does it say? Nannul talks about three kind of texts. Mudal, Vali, and Sarbunul. The original one, the Valinul that follows, and the later adaptation. And the grammar it gives for Valinul, which is what Kamba Ramayana is, without going against the core or contradicting the intent of the original text, tastefully retelling with changes made to reflect the times it is being written in, with clearly mentioning the basis for retelling the original is called Valinul, the one that has come from or follows the original. Actually, the Mudal Nool the commentators who explain Mudal Nool say that Mudal Nool means what has been given by gods. Perhaps the Vedic tradition is there in the mind when they say the Mudal Nool is the one which is given by the gods. And if we take at the Ramayana tradition here, Kamban and Arunachala Kavi, all of them, they really credit the tradition of how Ramayana came about. It came from Brahma to Valmiki, Valmiki to Kamban, Kamban to Arunachala Kavi, and this is how the flow is mentioned. So there is no denial of sources here in this tradition. And what Kamban does or what Arunachala Kavi does follows what Nannul quotes as the ilakkanam or a grammar for this kind of a retelling. Kulasekhara, Kamban and Arunachala Kavi, all of them were no doubt devotees who sang about Bhagavan's story, making their works very much part of Bhakti literature. We classify them as Bhakti literature because pure devotion is at the core, which is extremely visible in both Kulasekhara and in Arunachala Kavi, undoubtedly. Though both of them are separated by so many centuries, you can see the thread of that Bhakti to Rama. While Kulasekhara's is not a detailed Ramayana, we have taken it up to show the tradition since it's the first complete Ramayana narrative that we have. Ramayana has been quoted here and there in the Sangam period, in the Sangam literature, but it was the Alvars who first sing in detail about the Ramavatara, and Kulasekhara has captured all the Kandas, including Uttara Kanda in the mini Ramayana that he has given us. He has devoted 3 chapters, that is 3 decades, to Ramayana out of the 10 that he has written. In the first of the 3, which deal with Ramayana, in the first he sings a lullaby to Sri Rama, a talat. Again, it's the first of a kind that we have a lullaby to Bhagavan, looking at him as a baby and singing a lullaby to him. Though in the Krishnavatara, it takes a very different meaning in Periyar. In Kulasekhara, what he does in the lullaby is to tell Ramayana story itself. To begin with itself, he will tell you the deeds of Rama. I'll play this since it's a lullaby.
ராகவனே தாலேலோ என்னுடைய நமுதே ராகவனே தாலேலோ புண்டரீக மலர்தன்மேல் புவனியெல்லாம் படைத்தவனே புண்டரீக மலர்தன்மேல் புவனியெல்லாம் படைத்தவனே திண்டிரலாள் நாடகை புறமுருவ சிலை வளைத்தாய் திண்டிரலாள் நாடகை புறமுருவ சிலை வளை.
Okay. He begins with his avatara. He was born to Koshala, and immediately in the next line he goes to say, the one who vanquished Ravana, and then he goes on to talk about the Tataka Vadam, which we heard in that one line we played now. And the lines get more beautiful when he talks about Rama relinquishing the rule in favor of Bharata and going to forest. He says, Paralum Padar Selvam Bharathanambike Aruli ஆராவான் பிள்ளை அவனோடு அருங்கானம் அடைந்தவனே சீராளும் வரைமார்பா திருக்கண்ண புறத்தரசே தாராளும் நின்முடியன் தாசரதி தாளேலோ. He is like with utter, what to say, the vatsalya of a mother, that he sings these, talking about Ramas. He says like, you reached Dandakaranyam, followed by kith and kin. O Lord of Ayodhya, you are the balm to the beloved, the dark gem of Kannapuram. He situates this song at the Kshetra of Kannapura, and he sings to the Archa at Kannapuram as Rama. So he talks about the Valivadam and giving the Kishkinda to Sugriva, building the bridge across to Lanka and destroying it, and he weaves all of the Rama's deeds into this lullaby in these 10 verses. And he follows this with other 10 songs, which are Dasaratha's lamentations. It is like a pathos that he brings forth as to what Dasaratha felt when Rama left. He just cries. He says like, I am at an age when I should have gone on a vanaprastha. Instead, I've sent my son. How would that prince, that boy, would be able to walk on the forest path and lie on the floor there, on the floor of rocks and things like that? So that is like all completely Dasharatha's crying over his, pining over Rama. And then we come to the final decade, which is the condensed version of Ramayana. Since it is the first complete narrative of Ramayana, scholars like Suganya Anandakishnan tried to explore. Nayarji spoke about the Mula Ramayana. Here she explores as to what could have been the non-Valmiki sources of Kulasekhara, looking at the sculptures and looking at some of the texts like Paumacharya and Narasimha Purana and all of it, to see, because there are points where Valmiki and Kulasekhara differ. She picks up 2 episodes where there is a difference, which is the Guha ferrying the boat to cross Ganga, and the Shurpanaka's, the cutting of Shurpanaka's nose. And she also looks at the sculptural representations that we have to see, where the non-Valmiki elements come into Kulasekhara's work. So it shows that by the time Kulasekhara wrote and the Alvars wrote about Ramayana, it has been very much in the tradition. All of them must have known about it. To quote from the Periyar Pillai commentary, the translation that I picked up from Suganya, he says in this Tirumozhi, it is in the sacred town of Tiruchitrakutam, where the emperor's divine son lives permanently. Kulasekhara enjoys Rama as if he were contemporaneous to him by the distinctness of his knowledge, like the divine Lord Valmiki experienced him, by speaking of the story of Rama's avatara, beginning with his sacred birth. These 11 verses, he accounts for all the kandas, the stories from all of them. But how he divides is like half the verse is dedicated to Ramavatara, and the next half is like he is addressing the Archavatara at Tillai Chittirakoodam. It is the Govindaraja Sannadhi at the great Chidambaram Nataraja temple, and he looks at that Perumal there as Rama and sings that. So even within this 11 verses, it is only the first of the verses like completely Ramayana oriented, and the next lines talk about Thillainagar Tiruchitrakudathu Peruman, the one who's residing there. Alvars didn't show prejudice towards Sanskrit. We need to say this because a lot of opposition to Valmiki also stems from the Sanskrit origin. I just want to quote one line here where Alvar says, describes Perumal as and the Tamilinba Pavinai of Vadamozhiyai. He is Tamil. He is as well Sanskrit as well. And commentators have tried to interpret this Vadamozhi as Ramayana itself, for the kind of devotion Kulasekhara had, perhaps that interpretation is not out of place. The traditional accounts say how Kulasekhara used to listen to Ramayana Katha regularly, and at one instance he asked.
Vaijayanthi ji, are you coming to the conclusion, wrapping up?
No, I didn't have my time. I think so, Nagaraj Garu.
You have how many more minutes of presentation?
I need at least 10 minutes, even if I want to quickly run through.
Yeah. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go fast when I talk about it. What he talks about it is he addresses the song's verses to the Archavatara Tillai Chitrakoodam, but he completely captures the Ramayana. The first verse talks about the city of Ayodhya, the undefeatable great ramparts, and he describes Rama as red-eyed, tall, and dark-hued, and then he talks about the Tatakavatam, Vishwamitra Yaga Samrakshanam, and he also mentions the Chidambaram Tillai Stalavaralaru. He talks about the Tillai Muvairavar in this verse. And next he talks about the Sita Kalyanam follows, the Swayamvaram, and the Shivadhanu's episode. And there is, what to say, sort of Kamban taking cue from Kulasekhara and expanding it further when there is this instant of Rama and Sita having seen each other before the Swayamvara and how they instantly connect. So those lines are there, and we'll see that actually even in Arunachala Kavi. And then we have the Ayodhya Kandam, where he talks about he listened to his mother, Kaikesi's words, and like what Kamban also says, Aishu Ulagamillam Bharadane Ala, the command Kaikeyi gave that Rama left the Rajyam and left for this thing. The Guhapadalam is mentioned. Then he crosses the Ganges. The Aranya Kandam also continues. He talks about Bali slaying of the strong-armed Virada, accepting the bow from Tamil Mamuni Agastya, chopping off the nose of Surpanaka, slaying of Karadushana, shooting of Maricha, all of that. And then the separation from Sita. Sita is now taken away. He talks about affected by the separation from Vaidehi, in whom the prosperity resides. He calls Dhanamaru Vaidehi Piriyalutru Talarvaidi Sadayuvai Vaikunta Tetri, sending Jatayu to Vaikunta, sending Maruti to Lanka and burning the city, and all that is mentioned. Then the Setu Bandhanam comes up in the next verse. And here he says, after all that, Innuir Kondu Avan Thambikku Arasumindu, he has given the Lanka to Vibhishana. Thirumagalod Ininavartha Selvan Thannai, that he is rejoined with Lakshmi, Sita again. Thilainagar Tiruchittirakoodam Tannul, he looks at him as holding Sabha at Thilainagar Tiruchittirakoodam. And Uttarakhanda is also mentioned here. He talks about Rama's return and listening to Ramayana from Lava and Kusha, and the children born to Mithila's daughter for the redemption of the world. He also listened to the old story about the one he had killed previously from sage Agastya. That is the Ravana story narrated by Agastya to him. The controversial part is also covered by him. The Shambhukavada is there. The Lavanasura is also mentioned and talks about like how he had to part with Lakshmana because to avoid the wrath of Durvasa. All that is mentioned. And then what Valmiki says, we see here. He says, Andru Characharangalai Vaikunta Tetri, Adalarava Paheri Asuradamai Vendru, Ilangu Mani Nadandol, Nangum Tondra, Vinmuzum, Edirvarathan Tamamevi, Sendrini the Vitru, the Amman Tanne. Thilainagar Tiruchittirakoodam Tannul ennum nindran avanivan nindretri naalum iranjiminor eppozhudum tondir neere. Devotees always worship him, and he talks about like how when Rama left Ayodhya, he carried all the sentient, non-sentient beings, all of them to Vaikunta with him. And then he talks about Thilainagar Tiruchittirakoodam and the Falashruti, that everyone would be blessed at the feet of Narayana, those who recite that. That is where Kulasekhara ends. I just wanted to talk about that tradition. Namalvar talks about how Rama should be sung and praising Rama. And we have praiseworthy verse of the avatars, including Rama in Shilapatikaram, a verse which begins with Vadavaraye Mattaki, which is available to us. And to go back to Sangam work, Kalitohai, which talks about Ravana, it doesn't talk about in any glorious terms, where the poet compares Ravana's attempt in trying to lift Kailasa to a mad elephant misjudging a Vengai tree for a tiger, banging the tree with vengeance and falling to dislodge it, how Ravana's hand got caught and how he agonized. The Saivan Nayanmars who have sung about Ramayana episodes 2 may show partisanship to Shiva and use the story of Vishnu to talk about the greatness of Shiva, but they do not praise Ravana as a righteous king and accept Rama as an avatara of Vishnu. Much later, 19th century also, we have a Ramalinga Vallalar, Aruprakasa Vallalar talks about in a very beautiful terms about Rama and Rama Avatara. Aram Palukkum Taruve and Guruve and then Aruir Korutunaye Arase, talking about like how he doesn't want anything but Rama Valla in Tiruvarule, I want only your grace. That kind of a tradition where Rama is worshipped and then we come to the Arunachala Kavi, the message Arunachala Kavi. He was very close to Rama and he was also very close to Thiruvalluvar. Tirukkural and Ramayana both were very dear to him. And he chose between Tirukkural and Ramayana. He said, like, let me write about Ramayana. Tirukkural, he said, is a grammar of Dharma, whereas in Ramayana, I can tell the grammar of Rama interspersed in the story of Ramayana, which would be like, have a reach better this thing. So he chooses to tell the story of Rama in the Ramanada Kirtanai. He follows Kamban and he sticks only to Balakantam to Yuddhakantam. He doesn't sing Uttarakantam. This is a text which was performed then. Musically, we know that it has been performed and continues to be performed till date. Many of the songs are very popular. As early as 1945, 50 songs from Ramanadaka Kirtanegal was published by the Annamalai University with notations made by a great singer like Aryakudi Raman Jayangar and all have been published. So it is a text that has been in vogue, it has been in practice. I'm skipping all the part about Kavirayar's background and I am going directly to one of the songs, the prayer song which he sings when he goes to Srirangam to do Arangetram or staging, publishing this work. Kamban did it. So Arunachala Kavi also followed it and he also wanted to do it. So like Kamban, he also waits for a ascent from the divine being, the God, and also the temple authorities to understand that this is a worthy text that needs to be staged. And then in that prayer, he sings Ramayana again. And it is like why are you reclining here, Ranganatha? And here, very beautiful lines. He says like, are you tired of following Vishwamitra, killing Rakshasas, bending the Ishwara's bow and subduing Parashurama, walking with the blemishless Sita, crossing Ganges with Guha, and like this again is like a sort of all the Ramayana points are covered in the song in a very beautiful manner. Again, in other prayer, he talks about prayers to the lotus feet of Kodandam wielding one who took avatara at Ayodhya to remove the sorrow of the people, one who built bridge across the ocean to kill Ravana, praising Rama. Then one more mini Ramayana he builds in before he goes to the Balakanda itself. Enakkun Irupadam Ninaikka Varam Arulvai, Sri Ramachandra, Enakkun Irupadam Ninaikka Varam Arulvai. Please give me the boon to think about your 2 feet, Ramachandra, he says. Please give me a boon to think in my mind about your padams, this thing. The king who took incarnation as a son of Inita Dasarathan Tanakku Mahanenum Manathin Avadarita. So he talks about all this. It's like a 9 charanams in this song, which is again Ramayana. Then he launches into the Ramayana. Here in the tradition, because we are talking about tradition, I want to mention in the epic traditions, he asks for forgiveness. Abhajaras Shama, he asks for any mistake he might have done. And very interesting, he says Valmiki rendered the work as shlokas, Kamban wrote it as poetry, and Arunachala Kavi set out to write it because of his love for the work. And he asks what effect would it have if he makes mistakes in it. He says it will be similar to what happened to the hunter who made mistakes quoting Mara 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 instead of Rama 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 and attained Mukti. Then he writes about the greatness of Ramayana, how it is a great medicine. Then he starts with the avatara, the reason for the avatara, the rishis, devas asking Rama to relieve them of the troubles from the Rakshasas. So each one of the songs is very, very beautiful. Since I don't have time, I can't talk about it. The birth of Rama, which is talked about, Avadaram Seididuvire, Arakkar Vayate Viduvire, very simple words, words which can like reach to anybody in a performance. That is the kind of lyrics that he uses. And he talks about Rama as Parabrahma Swarupame Sri Ramanaga Paril Vandadu Paru. It is the Parabrahma who has taken the avatara. So, there are very beautiful songs, as I said. When Vishwamitra goes to ask Dasharath to give his son, it's like very dramatic. He says, Tadagai Pavi, Tavital and Velvi, Pidai Varamal Katal, Pidekum and Navi, Ramanai Taruvai, Jagat Rakshaka, Ramanai Taruvai, Vishwamitra demands. So, the commanding words he will say, Kobatil Rutiran, Guru Vishwamitriran, Abattu Kaka Venum, Adanal Un Puttiran. So, you give me your son because I need to protect my yaga. So, that is the kind of then there is a very romantic song that comes when Rama and Sita's eyes meet, as in Kamba Ramayana. Kamban deals with in very big detail. Here we have a beautiful song which Rama sings, saying, "Who is this person?" And Chandra Bimba Mukhamalarale Enaitane Parkira Orukale Andanal Tondam Pole Uruhirar Indanalil Vandu Sevai Tarigirar Aro. Your Aro Ena Pero Ariene, that is one song that comes in. Then Kaushika, after at the Swayamvara, he introduces Rama to Janaka. There again, Rama's prowess is mentioned. Suradi Suran, Raman Enu Peran, Suguna Dhiran, Ravikula Kumaran. So don't think of him as a very ordinary person. He is a great person who has come here. Turatum Sabam Ahalikek Kalinale Tudetane, who removed the curse on Ahalya with just the dust from his feet. So he says all these are things. Then the Sita Kalyanam, Swayamvaram, everything happens. As I said, very, very simple terms and terminologies that uses. There is a song which comes when Sita speaks her mind. Rama says he is going to the forest and she is not accompanying him. So, Eppadi Manam Tunindado Sami, Manam Poi Vargire Nendra, Ida Yerkumo Bhumi. How dare you say that you will go? How can it be accepted? So, but she's see the words that are used. Karumbu Muritar Pole Solalachdo. Can you just like break the news to me like breaking a sugar cane? And then says like, has your heart become iron that you are saying that you are leaving me? So, the kind of verses that we see. We don't know whether these have been performed as operas or dance dramas, though we have in the Maratha court the tradition of the Marathi Natya tradition, the Melatur Bhagavata Mela and the Gay Natakas in Telugu and all that. But this is sung, that much we know. There is one episode in the Kavanda sings about Rama. He recognizes Rama after he has been hit. and he recognizes him as a Paramatma and asks, why is Rama in the robes of a sannyasi? It is others who have to do penance to reach him. What is this form? What is it that you want to achieve through penance? You have removed my curse. Now go and meet Shabari. So these are the kind of conversations that we get. In Vali Vadam also, we have a conversation. After Vali falls, Vali also instructs Sugriva, know that he is Adidevan Sriraman, the one the Vedas and Shastras describe as one. So you take care of him, serve him. So all that is from Vali's voice also. Then Sundarakandam happens. Hanuman goes to Lanka and he breaks the, what to say, introduces himself with a very beautiful song to Sita, talking about the beauty of Rama. Anda Rama Saundaryam ellam arindu solla povumo amma. He describes the entire physique of Rama and the beauty of it. It's like a very soothing terms. He knows the situation the Sita is in, and the words and the way the song is conveyed, and it's in such a beautiful term. And then there is a very dramatic song when Hanuman goes into Ravana's darbar and he says, I am the Rama's envoy. Ramasami Tuda Nanada, Adada Ravana, Nanada, Yen Per Anumanada, Mamalar Talivasanum, Kailasanum, Rishikesanum, மறைந்து நின்று தந்தனான் அல்லடா புறம்பே நின்று வந்தனான் அல்லடா ராமசாமி தூதனானடா அடடா ராவணா நானடா என் பேரனுமானடா. This is the drama tradition that he follows in the way he brings it. In fact, he is supposed to have two students who are well versed in Carnatic music, one Venkatrama Iyer and Kodandrama Iyer, with whose help he tuned all these songs into and performed them in music. Then there is this Kumbhakarna's advice to Vibhishana to stay put with Rama, saying at least one of the family would be spared by Rama's arrow to offer Shraddha to those who would be slain in the war. In the Agni Pariksha episode, it's a very beautiful, touching lines, and it is Agni Deva who speaks to Rama as to why should Sita have undertaken Agni Pariksha. Agni asks Rama, why did you do this, Rama? What mistake did I do that you made me stung by the heat of the virtuous Sita? It is my nature to burn anything that I touch, but even I was burned by the fire of this Pativrata. And on their return from Lanka, Rama shows Setu to Sita, and there is a song where he talks about all those things that are sinful to do. I don't know why at that point Arunachala Kavi added that it is done. And in Arunachala Kavi, Shushumna ji touched about it, the issue of chastity in the Kamba Ramayana. The idea of chastity, where it differs from Valmiki to Kamban, in Kamba Ramayana, they make a very clear distinction to say that the culture of Tamil land, Kamban took into account when he talked about how Ravana carried Sita, that he did not grab her, he did not touch her, he lifted her along with the Parnashala with the earth. And Arunachala Kavi also mentions that, and he says that it is not Ravana who picked me up, and it is he picked me up. Several instances in the verses, you will see that this is very specifically mentioned. As to why I am talking about it is when EVR's Ramayana is taken into account and how Ravana's actions are justified, it neither fits Tamil grammar nor the Tamil culture, because Thiruvalluvar, who Arunachala Kavi followed, has written one whole chapter called Piran Vidayamai, not to covet other man's wife, for which even Mu Karunanidhi has written a commentary. It says, like, why you are such a lowliest of low person if you covet other persons, you fall in lust over the other person's wife. So this kind of an act is not justified by anyone in the Tamil literary or moral scene. And the Tamil grammar also talks very clearly about what is a retelling, and neither from the cultural point of view or from the grammatical traditions that you had, does this become a Ramayana version, what it is. That is why I wanted to show how both Kulasekhara and Arunachala Kavirayar, both of them, they all come from different backgrounds. We are not talking about castes here. Otherwise, Kamban was not a Brahmin. He is supposed to come from an Uvacha community, which is considered the Grama Devata, priests of the Kali temples, Grama Devata temples. Arunachala Kavirayar is supposed to come from a Shaiva family, which is mentioned. Vellala and some Vaishya at different this thing. Vellala Bhu Vaishya says one text, and he was patronized by a Shaiva Mata. He collaborated with the Brahmin students, and he was patronized by Anandarangam Pillai, Manari Muthukrishna Mudaliyar, and all of them. Look at the situation, the collaboration that has happened when the work was written. But the work is very clearly a Ramayana retelling, where he acknowledges Valmiki, he acknowledges Kamban, and he follows the tradition. But he writes a drama which can be enacted and which can be carried to people. So this is my humble submission as to look at the Tamil literary tradition as much as we have. In fact, even in 20th century, a simpler Ramayana version we have from Papanasam Sivan, which was made into LP record in those form. And Nagaraj in the morning spoke about the smaller versions which we recite. We have a Pasurappadi Ramayanam, which is strung from words taken from the Nalayara Divya Prabandham, which is chanted and all that. So it is completely a tradition which talks in terms of Bhakti and Rama as Paramatma and a Bhagavan. A beautiful tradition. And whether we club this and what is a pamphlet which is come to denigrate it and which doesn't make sense in whichever way, as both as many Ramayanas. That is the problem that I wanted to present today. From Tirupukuri to Darbasayanam, Tamil land is blessed with the Ramayana connection, temples and sculptures, and it's unquestionable tradition. I just only wanted to show one simple part of it. There is Tirukural instances are there to talk about the morality part, and then the Nannul instance is there about it, and also the Sangha and the Shaiva poets instances to talk about how they looked at all. None of them have praised Ravana to be a great man. I can only recollect Srinivasa Sastri's line here. He says, Ravana can have greatness without goodness. I end with that. Mangalam Kosalendraya Mahaniya Gunatmane Chakravarthi Tanujaya Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaijayanthi ji. That was a very argumentative presentation. You showed what arguments of books like many Ramayanas were you countering also. Let us check if there are any questions.
It's Pranshu here. Sorry, Vaijayanthi ji, can you please share the source of R.C. Majumdar reference? Because I looked it up.
It is in the book called Ancient India. It is available online.
Yeah. I mean, oh, sorry, you can't see
I
it.
can share the page number with.
I have it. I'm reading it,
not
and
the page. Not this Bhavan series. There is a standalone. It's like a college textbook. It's easy to prescribe. That is how it was for us. The book itself.
So I think he's been misquoted there, because his quote is noting that the evidence within the epics, such as Ravan's non-Dravidian character and influence of Brahmanic practices, seems to contradict the theory of a sudden Aryan invasion. So R.C. Majumdar is saying that there is no such thing. That's the saying. So maybe and this is one thing we need to confront and correct. There are a lot of people who misquote great people's descriptions and publish them, and unless we go back and correct them.
Actually, I had taken it from the book itself. We were studying this book as part of our curriculum. That is when I noticed it. I have not taken it as a quote from anywhere else.
Oh,
that's
very interesting.
Okay. Pranshu ji, you read it out. The quote was read out by you, and probably there is a misunderstanding of the sentence because of the sentence structure. he is not supporting Aryan invasion. He is saying that there is a contradiction to Aryan invasion because of the evidence from Ramayana.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yes. The evidence in Ramayana is contradicting the Aryan invasion theory, is what he is saying.
Yeah, see,
Exactly.
but the quote I said is he's talking about the historical setting where he is saying that these people are conquerors. It also pays an indirect tribute to the high state of material and moral culture of the non-Aryans. The unfair means by which Vali was killed by Rama and Indrajit by his brother Lakshmana only prove once more that a conquering race cannot be as scrupulous in its methods of warfare. These are the lines that I had quoted.
Oh, okay.
Not
So these are two different quotes.
Yeah,
The
Okay.
quote from Pranshuji and quote from you are two different quotes.
yeah.
Let the audience go and check for themselves.
Aryan,
Uh,
but he shows a Aryan-Dravidian difference there.
hmm.
May not support
Okay,
the detection theory.
let us leave it there and let us check whether these quotes are actually there in the book or misunderstood. These two are two different quotes. That much is very clear.